Okay, so miniatures are obviously affected by actual physics because they exist in the real world. So any unpredictable actions or imperfections that subconsciously fool the eye help support the illusion. If you've ever had a chance to create any simulations or dynamic particle simulations or rigid body dynamics in a 3D program like Maya or Houdini, you'd realize that the simulation itself can become formulaic, and you have to introduce elements that are surprises. For example, if an explosion occurs in a movie and a large piece flies right at the camera, that's what we call unhappy accident. It's just something you didn't expect, but it looks great. Those are the kinds of things that you actually have to build into, procedural or synthetic computer simulations. Okay, that's not the case with, of course, a miniature being affected by actual physics, because all those unpredictable actions and imperfections that happen in the real world are going to happen as well, and it really helps support the illusion. In 2010, Christopher Nolan created a movie called Inception, and New Deal Studios was a company that they hired that handled the effects for an explosive demolition of a hospital, a massive concrete structure that was perched on the edge of a snow-covered mountain. Now, this miniature here, obviously you can see there's a person right down here, so you're looking at what the scale of this model is. And if you're doing a miniature that's actually huge, the name of that miniature is actually a bigature. It sounds silly, but it's true. That's the actual term. A very large miniature is a bigature, okay? And so you can see that this is done outside, possibly in a parking lot, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And we're going to analyze how they actually built this and what was the construction process involved. And bigatures are actually pretty common in the industry. The Hogwarts castle used in all the Harry Potter movies is absolutely huge. If you've ever had a chance to take a look at it, you could fly over to London, and it's on the Warner Brothers backstage tour. It's absolutely huge. So it's a bigature. In Titanic, the boat that they used was actually James Cameron's Titanic, a 90% scale model of the original Titanic. It was 90% size of the original Titanic, which you wouldn't think is a miniature at all, but it is. It's technically a miniature of something that was a little bit bigger. So that would be a bigature as well. So we're going to take a look at a little behind the scenes of how they destroyed this hospital for the movie Inception. And the first thing you may notice about this behind the scenes time lapse is the fact that they're actually going to build it not just quite large, but why are they building it so big? And why don't they shoot it into a studio? Why don't they put it into a soundstage and protect it from the elements? Well, simple reason is oftentimes you can't. It's not because you don't want to catch, the whole building on fire, but determining the scale is pretty important to when you're building these miniatures. So, and we'll talk about scale in a second, but also keep in mind that you need to shoot at a much higher frame rate than you would to slow the action down and increase the size of the illusion. So what we call an overcranked camera, when you're shooting at a high frame rate and you play it back at regular speed, everything moves in slow motion, makes things look bigger, more imposing. And you want to shoot, obviously, with as many cameras as you can get your hands on, because you want to capture this from as many angles as possible. And also, real quick, as we see this, you might also notice an expensive part of this shot was that they actually had to build and destroy this fortress twice. And we mentioned unpredictable actions can occur, especially when you blow up a miniature, and we'll talk about that in a second, is that the timing of the building fell in a way that the director did not particularly like. And he was very specific in the order of the explosions. And so they actually had to rebuild the whole thing all over again and tweak the computer-timed explosions to get it exactly the way Christopher Nolan wanted, and they got it right on the second take. So let's take a quick look at that. So as you can see, they're building with cargo boxes to maintain the integrity of the miniature underneath. And now the actual mountain, built from 2x4s, and probably could be foam core, could be all kinds of things, built in pieces so they could bring it out and piece it all together. Now, what's also great about shooting outdoors is, of course, you're going to get the natural light. You're going to get the sunlight. The sunlight is going to look on the model exactly how it would look as if this thing was built to the real scale. So you don't have to try and fake any lightings as if you were doing it in a soundstage. They're building the model in a very specific way that makes it adaptable for destruction. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. As you can see, it takes a considerable amount of time to actually do this, so there's a huge investment in the design, the concept, and the initial construction of these miniatures, and you want to build them as early as possible. There's the first take. They decided that's not what they were going for. Rebuild them. Set up all the cameras, second take. Now, it looks amazing in the movie. It doesn't look quite as amazing in real time here, but let's see the actual sequence and how it turned out in the movie. And another advantage is that cost is often a huge advantage, especially if the miniature is used in many shots and often recorded with multiple cameras in one take to give the editor lots of choices. So, for example, the tower that they built here ended up being about 40 feet in the air and required 2,200 pounds of table salt to mimic the snow. They shot with 4 cameras looking down and 1 looking up that would serve as a helicopter shot that was actually on a crane 70 feet in the air. The precise explosion was actually 200 specific computerized events timed to last for 5.5 seconds. You don't want to leave anything like that to chance if one camera you forgot to perhaps put the memory card in. Especially, when you're blowing up a miniature, you got to capture it. You got to save yourself insurance. You capture it from all different angles. And the reason why is that you simply can't just turn around and say, well, let's just rebuild it and blow it back up, because building these miniatures takes a long time and they're very expensive. And if you decide that you didn't have a backup, or it blew up, or something happened in a way that you didn't like, you're often going to be stuck with that if you don't have the money or the time to go back and fix it.